Hey guys, it's time for episode number 36 with one of the most reputable retail consultants around. Get ready to meet my friend Bob Negin with WhizBang Training. Let's talk about your business, strategy, and the juicy details of what actually works, from mainstream fashion to fashion on Main Street, and the entire ecosystem behind it. How do we scale your company and do it with the balance and the happiness that we all seek? Let's hear from those insiders, experts, and strategists that actually make it happen. I'm your host, Ashley Alderson from the Boutique Hub, and I can't wait to chat. Hey guys, if you've ever wondered about that process for completing a perfect purchase in your storefront, today you are going to have an answer and a ton of notes to go with it. You guys, I'm so excited today to be joined by Bob Negin, who is the founder with his wife, Susan, of WhizBang Training. Now, WhizBang is a leader in retail consulting. Bob and Susan have literally traveled the world sharing their experience as retail owners of a kite store in Michigan, and also their experience of leading some very well-known and very successful retailers of all shapes and sizes and types from all over the world. Today, Bob's going to join us to give us his insight on what's working in retail today, how to hire a team, how to train your staff, how to work through that process of a perfect purchase, and also how to get ready for the holidays. Bob definitely has a process and some insight on just about everything in this industry. So this is a great conversation. I hope you come ready to take some notes and to be inspired so that you are ready to tackle the holiday season. Enjoy this one, you guys. All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast this week. We have a guest today that I know you're going to find so much value from, because today Bob Negin of WhizBang Training is with me, and he's got to be one of the most, if not the most, well-known retail speakers in the U.S., someone who's been around for years and I know is going to bring so much value and insight to the conversation today. So, Bob, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I am thrilled and honored to be here.
Oh, man, I know you and I were talking before we started recording that we could probably get into the weeds with all kinds of to-dos and strategies for retailers. So we should probably get right into this, huh?
That sounds great. And you know what? If we get too far into the weeds, we can always do another one sometime.
I like it. Well, there's so much to talk about. But before we get into that, I want to start just by hearing more of your backstory. I've known you for a couple of years now. I think we've gotten to know each other and work together a little bit. And it's pretty amazing what you've built, the community that you have and the expertise that you have. So can you give us that backstory of how you got to the place?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so in 1981, I was 23 years old. Yes, that does date me. And I had just graduated from college and I had a new hobby. And that hobby was kite flying. I loved everything about kite flying. And So, I didn't want to get a real job. And because I had this passion for kites and because I didn't want to get a real job, I thought I would open a kite store. Ashley, how hard can it be to run a retail store? So I had $2,000, zero business experience. I really had only owned a couple kites in my life, but, I was young, dumb, and stupid. And I thought, so I went up to Mackinac City, Michigan, and I opened one of the world's first kite stores. And of course, I didn't know what I was doing. Of course, the early years were a huge struggle. The first year we were in business, it was a seasonal store, which of course made it even more difficult to succeed. But that first season in business, we did $17,000. And so, but I was willing to work hard. I did all of the things that we'll kind of talk about here today. But, through the course of 19 years, and I owned that business for 19 years, through the course of that 19 years, I really figured out how to make retail work. And in 1999, by that time, we were a multi-store, multi-million-dollar business. And maybe sometime in this conversation, we can talk about my yo-yo experience because, we sold several $1 million worth of yo-yo and yo-yo accessories. But in 1999, my brother Steve, my youngest brother, who I hired the first year and who I made a junior partner, came to me and said, do you want to sell your part of the business? And by then, I was ready to move on. And what I realized was that so many people needed what I had that my wife Susan and so I sold the Mackinac Kite Company to my brother Steve, who still owns it and runs it successfully. And my wife Susan, who was working for us, who was a department store executive, started WhizBang Retail Training. So since 1999, the two of us and our colleagues, our company here at WhizBang Retail Training, all we do is work with small to mid-sized independent retailers, just like your listeners. And our mission is to give you hope and to help you with the skills you need to realize those dreams. I know what it's like to have that dream, to have the dream of the store that your customers love, that has the amazing team, that is making money, has strong cash flow. I know the hope that, I understand that hope, but I also know that there's a lot of things you need to know how to do in order to make that dream a reality. And that's what we do here. We work with independent retailers to give them hope and to help them run more successful businesses. Ashley, a lot like what you
absolutely. do. Except with you, when someone tells you to go fly a kite, you're not offended at all by it, right?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Oh, man. Well, I want to reflect a little bit more on your time with the kite store, because I'm sure there were so many key moments as you went throughout that business of ups and downs, successes and failures that you felt like were really aha moments that led you to what you teach today in WhizBang. But could you elaborate on, if there was one toughest decision you felt like you had to make in that business? What was that toughest decision that maybe led you to a big breakthrough that helped you get to the other side and the more successful side of that business?
So there were a couple of things, I don't know if there was, I'm thinking of just a couple of moments in particular, but the first one was, and I, all of these moments I can remember clearly. I mean, as in I can feel the emotion. I can put myself in that place because it was that important. And we sold a guy, this was year 1 or 2, so early on. And we sold a guy a 7-foot skyscrapers rainbow delta. You see, I can still remember the kite. And we didn't have the right string. It's called line, but for your listeners, we didn't have the right string. So we sold him the wrong string. We should have sold him 50-pound line. Instead, we sold him 30-pound. And sure enough, he went out and the line wasn't strong enough. He flew it in winds that were too heavy and it broke the string. It broke the line. And he came in and he said, "Hey man, the string broke. I flew it first time I've ever flown this kite, and the line broke." And I remember walking over to the bin, and this was a $35 kite, and $35 at that time was a lot of money. And taking a kite out of the bag and said, "Look, that was the wrong line. Let me give you a kite that will fly with the right line." And, so I made it right by him. And my brother Steve was watching, and I could see it happening in his head as it was happening in my head. And that is this idea of the customer. Making it right for the customer is the right way to do business. And that is always the way that we did business. When we teach retail now, we focus so much with our better clients on lifetime value of a customer. When we talk about return policies, make them generous because it's lifetime value of a customer. So that was sort of a moment where we went, okay, we're going to be intensely customer focused, that making it right for our customer is the most important thing that we can do for the long-term growth of our business. There's one other one, and and this is super important. And some of your listeners will hear this and go, "Durr," and some of them will go, "Oh, but I didn't pay my withholding taxes for a while. I didn't have any money, and I didn't pay my taxes for a while." And they weren't sending me letters, so I thought, well, they must have forgotten about
We can only hope,
me.
right?
Well, Ashley, they didn't forget about me. The Internal Revenue Service didn't forget about me, and so uh, I got the letter from the Internal Revenue Service, and I had to go into Grand Rapids, Michigan, to the Gerald R. Ford Federal Federal Building, go up to the 7th floor to talk to Mrs. Welch, who made an appointment. Put together a payment plan for me. But so when you talk about key moments, the one was be intensely focused. The second one is pay your taxes on time.
So many good truths. Well, let's flip that, because I'm sure so many of those aha moments you see reliving on a daily basis through the clients that you work with. So I'd love to
Absolutely.
hear, just about the clients that you work with. And I know some of them, when you kind of look at the group as a whole, all the clients you've worked with over the years, are there things that you feel like the most successful retailers you've worked with have in common?
Yes, there are a couple of things. The first and most important thing is this idea of uh, that customer focused. Customer focus. I created a concept. It's an acronym called WWMCW. What would my customer want? And what I find is that when people buy into that philosophically, when they really start to build their business around that essential question, that great things start to happen. So when you say, what would my customer want? When you ask yourself, what will my store hours be? You don't say, well, am I going to save $3 on, am I going to talk about payroll percentages? Am I going to talk about how busy it is? No, you ask yourself, what would my customer want? When you think about generous return policies, what would my customer want? So that whole idea that our best clients are really, really intensely customer focused.
What would my customer want? I love that. That's a great acronym. Easy for them to slap on a bracelet. Most retailers need that.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I introduced the concept at one of our, few years ago at our Retail Success Summit, and we made a bunch of the little rubber bracelets. I don't know, a couple hundred of them, just and I didn't know whether the concept was going to go over or not. But I said, hey, if you like this concept and you'd like one of the bracelets, we have some in the back. And there was a rush of people to go get them. And then I've heard stories of people since then, retailers who have created really nice ones for their team members to wear when they're out on the floor. Again, to remind them that, everything in your business is an expense except for your customers, who bring the money and who pay those expenses. So when you stay focused on your customers, good things start to happen.
I want to talk about, kind of the foundations of business and retail today in a couple of key kind of cornerstone segments. So when we're talking about a successful retailer, I want to start with kind of the basics of planning. Talk to me about just kind of your strategies with retailers on a daily or weekly basis, some of those foundational things of planning, goal setting, and then what reporting we're going after on a weekly basis.
Yes. So if you don't mind, we'll back it up even a little farther, because there's the weekly and the monthly rhythm that a business has to get into to communicate clearly with their team. But really, I'd like to go back a little bit and talk about structure. because, so there's the day to day of growing your business. And, so there's, I believe in having weekly meetings, monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, annual planning meetings. I believe that meetings are, one of the ways that you and your team develop rhythm. But one of the biggest mistakes that I make, and one of the things that our best clients do well, is see the bigger picture and build the structure that's needed for their team members to thrive. So I'll give you an example: a training program. I have this saying: if it ain't written, it ain't real. But until you've taken until you've taken your vision for your business and created a manual that shares that vision, that has taken that vision and created standards around it and train your people to it, they're going to have a hard time thriving. Because, here's something that's an interesting truth. If you don't create standards for your business, your team members have no choice but to create their own. So when I think about what do the best retailers do around planning, there's the rhythm that you have in your store. There's a rhythm of, reset your floor, buying, receiving, and all those things. But even more importantly, if you want to have the long-term big time success, you have to plan what I call a focus time into your day. You have to see the big picture things. You have to create the marketing plan. You have to create the training manuals. You have to do all that big picture stuff that's important. And, so when we talk about the week, I know that the best retailers find time to do the important work. The people who are struggling are forever in the weeds. And the only way to get out of the weeds is to stop, schedule the time, do the important work, and move on.
So good. Something we always say too is, it's the 20% of your list that gets you the 80% of your results, right? But it's often that 20%.
That's
it's
right.
The things that people procrastinate the most on, and they push off to the end of their day or to the end of their work week. So what you're saying is absolutely correct.
So can I share something else with you? A couple things?
Yeah.
So I've created and I created this when I was a retailer, and I call it the retailer's time system. And it's a way to look at, we're talking about structure here, and you're asking about, planning and things like that. But the best retailers use, in our community anyway, use this retailer's time system. And there's 4 F's in it. There's flex time, floor time, focus time, and free time. And if you start to become very, very intentional about how you use your time, you'll be able to get out of the weeds and do this important work. So most independent retailers I know live in the world of flex time, which is multitasking. And I lived in flex time for, 15 years, and I never got where I wanted to go. But then I started to schedule floor time, meaning when I was scheduled on the floor, that's all I did. I didn't take calls from my vendors. I didn't run down to the basement to work on the schedule as soon as there was, a lull in the traffic. I worked on the floor. I worked with my customers. I worked with my team. And that's floor time. And what I found was all of a sudden I was having a lot more fun on the floor again, because I wasn't being distracted by all the tasks that every, store manager or owner has to do. So that's floor time. There's flex time, which is when you're multitasking. There's floor time when you're on the floor, focused on what happens on the floor. And then there's focus time. And focus time is when you do the things that I just talked about. That's when you write the manuals. That's when when you do the training. That's when you think about your business in a meaningful way. And the more focus time you can build into your schedule, the more free time you're going to have. Because another characteristic of successful retailers is they take time off. You have to rest.
I'm sure there's a lot of them that are listening right now, shaking their heads, going, "Aha!" I mean, it's a perfect system, but the time off is kind of a slap in the side of the face. Like, yeah, you do, right? Because
You
can't fill
do.
someone else's cup if yours is empty. So,
Well, and that's right. And, and all of the science is showing it now too. So can I share a
yeah,
story? So there's a boutique owner. She has three stores, three high end women's clothing stores, and she joined our Platinum Mastermind group. And she was of the opinion that she had to keep working harder and harder and harder, and she was literally burned out. And when she joined the group, the first thing we said to her is, look, the first thing we're going to do is going to get you out of this I have to work harder mindset and get you into thinking about what your business, what needs to happen in your business in order for it to run without you. And within 2 years, she took 4 weeks in Italy and she left her business. She went from being totally in the weeds every day, all day, to being able to take 4 weeks in Italy and essentially check out of her business. And, in when she talked about it in retrospect, she said, I couldn't imagine that I would get to that place. And that's what I really want your listeners to understand is that it's really, the secret to your long-term success is not tactical. It's not learning the next great marketing thing. It's not about social media. It's about you being a professional retail business owner. It's about you thinking about your business in a professional, big picture, long-term way. So I have a friend, I was in a mastermind with a guy, super, super successful guy. And he said this to me, and I know it'll be, it will strike a nerve with most of your listeners. He said, Bob, in the beginning of a business, the more you do, the more you make. He said, but there comes a time in a business where the more you think, the more you make. And since you can't think and do at the same time, when you get to this place where your business is growing, but you're stuck, you have to start doing less and thinking more. Do you agree with that,
oh,
Ashley?
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think that there's a difference in being a solo entrepreneur or a hustler or the things that you have to do at the beginning of your business, just like you said, and being a CEO. A CEO, of course, they're not going to lower or let's say not avoid doing the things that the entry level staff would do, but they know where their time is most precious and valuable and makes the most return on investment. I think that's exactly what you're saying. You have to be a retail expert and know how to get the ROI, and that's by thinking. So good.
That's right. And they do it. They spend the time. They put it on their calendar, and they work it appropriately.
So let's talk about money a little bit, because I think in regards to planning and just making sure that you're working, let's say smarter and not harder, let's talk about on a weekly basis how you are using your money mindset to think about your business and make smarter planning choices along building margin. I know you've got some great analogies when it comes to pricing as well.
Yeah. So, and for all of your listeners, Ashley, we did share a video from the Retail Mastery System on the 3 rules for profitable retail pricing. And so, one of the things that I believe with, to the bottom of my heart is that you owe it to yourself to earn the right to charge as much as possible. So when we think about money mindset, and I love the way that you phrase that, so many independent retailers are afraid to charge what they're worth. So your challenge when it comes to mindset is to create the kind of business, to create the kind of team that gives your customers the experience they deserve, that allows you to charge what you should. So many people feel that they're playing the price game with the online merchants, with the guy down the street, when you're not. You're playing the price game with yourself. You're asking yourself every morning, what can I do that's fun and interesting and cool that will make my customers loyal to me? One of the things that everybody who's listening to this has to understand, because I assume that, just about all your listeners are independent boutique owners, is that, you have to charge what you're worth, and you earn that right by giving your customers a great experience. The minute you start playing the price game, you're screwed.
Oh, it's so true. And you know what? We have this conversation, I think, on a daily basis, because if your customers are really after the lowest price, you and I both know they can go to Walmart and get the lowest price any day of the week. And you know what? They're going to price match it on top of it. But
That's right.
if you're in the business of providing an experience, which is going to set you apart every single day. So good.
Yes. And so let's talk about something else, because so many people, and this happens in the boutique industry as much as anywhere, and because I shop a lot, is there's this whole idea of or there's this mistaken idea that it's about your store. So I was just, you and I were chatting before we started recording, and for all the listeners, I just got back from a college visit tour with my youngest son. And so we went shopping in both downtown Bozeman and in downtown Boulder, Colorado. And both of them beautiful districts, beautiful buildings. And the stores were all beautiful. And Ashley, it drove me crazy to go into these gorgeous stores and get essentially no service. And I came up with this idea of the engagement-o-meter. And the fanciest store of all had a 0 on the engagement-o-meter. So I'd come into a store and, nobody would acknowledge me. Or if they acknowledge me, they'd look up and say, hi. I went into a kite store. This pained me because I'm from the kite business. Beautiful kite store in Boulder, Colorado. 3 people standing behind the counter. Not one of them looked up and said hello to us. Not one of them was engaging a customer at all. So when we talk about the experience, I just really want your listeners to understand that the experience, of course you need to have great selection. Of course it needs to be displayed well, but the experience comes from having good people who know what they're supposed to do, who have been trained on your product and have been trained how to sell and are expected to get out on the floor and engage with your customers.
Man, you talked about having the weekly meetings, right? Weekly,
Yep.
quarterly. Let's talk more about that training experience, because we're coming up upon the 4th quarter, right? Where
Yes.
this is the kiss of death if you're a brick and mortar store owner and your employees are not trained at this point. So what do you think is the best way for someone who's listening right now to create a plan to start training those employees on customer service so that they can maximize this time of year that we're entering into?
Absolutely. So now that, on the ideal would be that they would go back and they would write a training manual. And, the training manual would have all the standard operating procedures, would talk about customer philosophy and do all those things to create a training program. But let's just kind of assume that there's not time for that. So the best thing to do is to, create short and sweet videos and post them either on a private YouTube channel or on a private Facebook group, a secret Facebook group that is just for your customers. So what they would do, what your listeners would do, is sit down and say, what do my people need to know for 4th quarter? What do they need to know? What are our return policies? What is going on with marketing in the first quarter? What do they need to know? That's the first thing. So standard operating procedures, philosophies, things like that. Make videos, one-shot wonders. They don't have to be fancy. They don't have to be edited. They don't have to be produced. You take your phone and you get it down. You just make a video and you post these videos. The second part is product knowledge. So again, you make videos about product knowledge. These are going to be the most popular lines this holiday season. This is how you sell these most popular lines at the holiday season. So you've got sort of operations, you've got product, and then you've got selling. And so really, you want to make the biggest impact at the holidays, there has to be sales training. So let's talk about that for a moment. Because may I make your listeners a little uncomfortable or excited? You can either become uncomfortable or excited. So I do a lot of sales training. And whenever I do sales training, I ask this question. I say, write down the average sale of your average, you write down your average sale. And so let's say, what would be an average sale of a listener to this podcast? $100?
Yeah, let's keep it simple, $100.
Let's keep it simple, $100. Then I say, so look at the average sale of your best salesperson and write that down. And there is always at least a 25% difference. So if the average sale is 100, their best salesperson is 125, then I say, so think about it this way. Every time somebody other than the person who is averaging $125 talks to a customer, it's costing you $25. And there's always a moment of silence. But it's true, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So the $125, so the salesperson who averages $125 is not getting a better quality customer. They're just engaging them and selling them more skillfully. So, we do online sales training. It's called the Retail Sales Academy. And, so if your listeners don't know how to sell themselves or don't know how to train their teams how to sell, they don't have to do it themselves. You can allow me to train your people. And I don't want to turn this into a long conversation about the Retail Sales Academy, but when we talk about fourth quarter, you want to maximize fourth quarter? You want to make sure that every single customer who comes into your store is not only greeted and is not only treated in a friendly way, but is actually engaged in a meaningful way, meaning there's good questions being asked. There's, follow-up questions, that there is stuff that, that suggestive selling is going on, that's adding on is going on. Because the people who sell skillfully own Christmas.
Let's talk about some of those questions and some of those upsell, cross-sell strategies, because you and I both know the kiss of death question, can I help you find anything today? Which immediately sends everybody right back out the door.
Right.
Yeah,
Nope, just looking.
Kiss of death. So think about what are some alternative questions we can train our staff to ask to avoid that death right away.
Sure. So I mean, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sort of jump into my sales trainer mode for a second and just sort of share, this answer. So the first thing that happens, the first step. So I teach something called the 6 steps to the perfect purchase. I don't want you to make a big sale. I want your customers to get the perfect purchase, because if they get the perfect purchase, they're going to come back, right? The total dollar does not reflect the quality of the sale. The customer's happiness reflects the quality of the sale. So the first step is the greeting. And, to your point, the kiss of death is, can I help you? Because they always say no. And so what we teach is you use warm words of welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, how are you doing? So think about if somebody comes to your home. What do you say to them when you invite them in? The greeting is not about selling something. The greeting is merely establishing the fact that we are two human beings talking together. And what you're trying to do here is you're trying to make people feel comfortable with you so that when you do start asking questions, that they feel good about it. So you use these warm words of welcome, and then you start to engage in warm chatter. Then you do something that we call comment or compliment. So being in the women's fashion, you would say, "Oh, I love your coat," or "I love your shoes," or you can always talk about the weather. If somebody's wearing a beautiful necklace, you can comment on that. You can compliment on that. Remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to merely sort of loosen the conversation up a little bit, because what you want is you want people feeling super comfortable answering your questions, because it's the holidays and you're talking about gifts, and the better the more open they are with their answers to your skillfully asked questions, the better, the more likely it is that you're going to get them to a perfect purchase. So you start by just establishing that human connection. And then you ask something that we call the key question. And it's called a key question because a key question really unlocks that conversation. It takes it from, "Hi, how you doing? That's a beautiful necklace," to "You're in this store for a reason. Let's talk about what it is." Now, there's a couple of different key questions, but for the holidays, you're always asking a choice key question. So you're saying, are you looking for something for yourself? Are you looking for a gift? Or maybe a little of both? In that question, when they give you an answer, you're now off to the races, right? If they say, "Oh, I'm looking for a gift," then of course, and the next question is, well, who is it for? What are they like? What are their fashion? What do they like to wear? What do they look like? Things like that. If they're looking for themselves, oh, good. What are you shopping for today? Is there a special occasion? So the key question allows you to start the third, that whole questioning and listening phase of the 6 steps to the perfect purchase. And then it's just a question of you being the owner, training your people to ask great questions, because every great question gets you closer to a perfect purchase.
These are so good. I hope everyone who's listening has a page full of notes by now, because this is absolutely right. And really, Bob, as I hear you speak, I know that this is relevant to brick and mortar store owners. And we have a lot of listeners who are both brick and mortar and online. But truly, it's all relevant online just the same. When you're Facebook marketing, it's really the same process. You're greeting, you're building a relationship, you're digging in before you ask that key question. You're not going to, kiss a girl on the first date, hopefully, right? So you're going to build the relationship before you ask her to buy something with you in a Facebook group or in an Instagram story, whatever it is. So this is all relevant. Can you talk about the next step?
So when I teach marketing, and really, I mean, what we are best known for, well, we're known for customer service and sales training and all those things, but a lot of what we do is marketing. And when we think about marketing, I teach this concept called the emotional bank account. And I give all the credit to Stephen Covey, because he introduced me to the concept in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But Covey contends in his book, and I agree, that that in any relationship, it's an emotional bank account. And what you're trying to do as an independent brick and mortar store or an online merchant is you're trying to build the relationship. So everything that you do that's good and fun and interesting and shows interest in them can be viewed as a deposit. And every time you ask them for money or ask them to do something, it's a withdrawal. And so just as in a real bank account, the bigger the balance, the more you get to withdraw. The exact same thing happens with the emotional bank account. So your marketing isn't just about getting people in the store. The marketing is first and foremost building the emotional bank account so that the balance with your customers is high enough so that when you do ask them to come into your store, they go, well, of course, I love this store. I love what they do. And that's what social media is. The biggest mistake I see people make on social media is they're trying to sell instead of, showing some love and then asking for a little love in return after a lot of love has been given.
You bet. It's a Gary Vee strategy, right? Jab, 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 right hook. You got it. So I'm curious. I want to go back to your 6 steps to the perfect. Was it 6 steps to the perfect
purchase?
So you've got the greeting, the comment or compliment, the key question. Can you talk about once someone is interested and they're walking to the cash register?
Absolutely.
And
so, and especially at the holidays, this becomes so important. So the questioning and listening. So there's the greeting, and then there's the questioning and listening, and the key question is actually part of the questioning and listening. And so once you start asking questions, then they're going to give you information that, allows you to go and show them the appropriate merchandise, right? You're not really asking for, for the sale. You're not until they start giving you good information. So let's just say I'm in a woman's clothing store and I'm looking for something for myself. So when you go to that, so I'm looking for a sweater for myself. So you start asking questions. What's the occasion? What colors do you like? And you're always looking for nonverbal cues because, their body language is telling you a lot. And I talk about in the questioning and listening, there's always this idea of active listening. You're really paying attention to their body language. What are their eyes telling you? If you hold up a red sweater and a blue sweater and they look at that red sweater and their eyes start to, shine, well, it means that they like red. But here's the thing, it's not a perfect purchase if they don't have everything they need to look great in that sweater. So a skilled salesperson is always showing other items at the same time. So there's this red sweater, and you know what? I have a beautiful necklace with matching earrings that you would love. So while people are buying what we call the main thing, you're always looking to add on during that time because it's not a perfect purchase. So what are they buying? They're not buying a sweater, Ashley. They're buying the feeling they get when they look amazing. If they're buying a suit for a job interview, they're buying the feeling of confidence that they get when they sit down. If they're, going out on a special date, they're buying the feeling they get when they look really, really sexy. So if you're not selling them everything they need to complete it, you're not giving them the service they deserve. It's not a perfect purchase, and you're not taking all the money, or you're not getting all the money that you should get either. Now, we're talking about the holidays. So you have the main item and you're adding on, show until they say no. But then once you've established what that main thing and the, associated accessories that will make them feel great, then you say, is there anybody else on your list? You don't assume that you're done. Is there anybody else on your list? And you'll be amazed at how many people will say, Aunt Dorothy. I haven't bought for Aunt Dorothy yet. So your holiday customer is different than your regular customer. Your regular customer is in buying a thing. Your holiday customer is in checking people off their list. And if you can check 2 or 3 people off their list, they're happy and you're happy. So you're always asking that question after that initial sale, after they've bought the main thing. Then you say, are you looking for anybody else? Who else is on your list? Or you might even say, if they were shopping for themselves, you say, have you seen? Because if I'm working with you and I've developed this relationship with you and I've asked you all these good questions, I have a feeling for who you are and what you like. And since I know who you are and what you like, I also know what else in my store would fit you like a glove. And so I say, oh, you love that red blouse? Come check out this red coat. You're going to love this. So you're always looking for other opportunities to help that customer get a more perfect purchase. Does this make sense? But then we're not done
absolutely.
yet, because this is where the holidays you really get to make money. And that is by having impulse items at the counter. So you always have things that are easy to demonstrate and are small. And you say, have you seen these stocking stuffers? And whether it's a lotion, whether it's earrings, whether it's expensive, remember, stocking stuffers don't have to be inexpensive. They just have to be small. Impulse items, it should be a non-negotiable standard that in every store, once the customer gets to the counter, before they're rung up, that, there's this, have you seen? And they're demonstrated 1, 2, even 3 different impulse items that might make good stocking stuffers, that might, they're impulse items.
Such a good tip. Absolutely. And what about the actual close? Because I'm assuming the perfect purchase doesn't end right when we're ringing up. Tell me about the follow-up to the sale.
So the follow-up, so of course there's the entire, so there's the closing questions, that's one of the steps is the close. But when, to your point, once it's been rung up, there's a couple of things and these are some of the most important tips that I can give your listeners, is you really need to have a loyalty program. Because a loyalty program gives you the opportunity to ask for their contact information. Your contact information, your customer database is, in my opinion, the most important asset in your business. Because once someone joins your loyalty program, they have figuratively raised their hand and given you permission to market to them. And so when we talk about how to follow up, the first thing is to make sure that people, and again, a non-negotiable standard. So do you know about our, Bloomin' Boutiques? Whatever the name of your loyalty program is, every single customer is invited to join the program. And now this is a little pro tip it's a pro tip. Everyone who joins your loyalty program should get a handwritten thank you card after the fact. So imagine this, Ashley. You come into my store, you have this great experience, highly trained, highly skilled, super helpful person gets you to the perfect purchase. You come to the counter and you've had a great experience. I invite you to join my loyalty program, and you go, of course, this place is awesome. I love this place. And then you come home, and then 3 days later you get an email, or if you can get their physical address, you get a card in the mail. That's how you start a relationship. Absolutely. The right way.
You don't love them and leave them, right? You've got to follow.
No. So, there's only 3 ways to grow your business. There's get new customers, there's increase the average sale, which is what we're talking about here. But then the big time, long-term growth comes from more transactions per customer. And you're right, that love them and leave them mentality does not get you loyalty, does not get you more transactions per customer.
So all of these are such perfect tips as we walk into the holiday season. And I know that there's one more, topic I really want to touch on as it relates to the holidays and your team. And that is the idea of a sale versus a promotion, shifting gears just a little bit. If I see there's one red flag coming for so many retailers, especially new retailers, they feel like they have to put the store on sale in order to make it through Black Friday. Can you talk about your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So there is a huge difference between a sale and a promotion. A sale, means that you have a store-wide discount. And, everybody in fashion should have at least 2 sales a year, to flush out the old inventory, make room for the new inventory, free up cash for new inventory and things like that. After that, you only want to have a sale if you're being incredibly strategic. And so there are lots of different things that you can do that drive traffic, but don't have a store-wide sale attached to it. In fact, I would love to invite your listeners to go to WhizBangTraining.com. There's an H in WhizBang, and go to the blog. And I have a blog post, a video blog on 5 different types of promotions for retailers. And because, there's so many things, I'll just give you, I know we're running short on time here, but I'll give you one great promotion for the holidays that's called an item sale. It's called a special. And the promotion is the 12 days of Christmas. And some of your listeners probably know about it. But here's the scoop. Here's what happens there is every day for the 12 days leading up to Christmas, there's one item on sale at a super deep discount. Not 10, not 15, not even 20, 40, 50, 75% off. One item. And then every day in the early morning of the day, you release that one item. And that one item drives people into the store. So remember, there's a difference between selling and marketing. The job of marketing is not to sell something, it's to get someone in the door. So while you have one item on sale, that drives the traffic, it gets them into the store, and then your highly trained, super friendly, great people and your wonderful merchandise and your awesome displays gets them to buy a lot more. So you don't have to have a store-wide discount associated with it. And I understand what happens because I did this exactly, like you said, for probably 12 years. Anytime I did a promotion, fear led me to put a store-wide discount to it because I was afraid that if I didn't have a store-wide discount associated with my promotion, no one would come. But what I found was I just trained my customers to wait for me to have another sale. So you can have customer appreciation events. You can do offsites. You can do all sorts of stuff, but you don't have to have a store-wide discount associated with your sales. In fact, you shouldn't unless you're being incredibly strategic.
Well, I think it's so good. And it goes back to what you said earlier. Just about valuing your worth and not getting into the price game. And you're not going to go into Black Friday competing with Amazon or a big box retailer on price because you're going to lose every time. But what you will win on is that experience. And that's exactly what 12 Days of Christmas. And I know so many of the things that you're referencing, that's what it's all about. So perfect advice. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I think as our time kind of wraps up together, again, so many great takeaways from this podcast. I really appreciate it so much, Bob, having you join us and share your wisdom. And I just kind of want to have you leave us with this parting thought. There's so many, I'll say, new retailers listening, but there's so many experienced retailers listening too that are maybe shifting their sales strategy. Maybe they're online retailers that are moving into brick and mortar, or they're brick and mortar stores who've been in existence for 15, 20, 25 years, and they're moving into an online presence. So if you could say your biggest and best advice, of where these retailers should stop and focus as we go into the fourth quarter, as they're entering something new, what is that number one focus going to be?
The customer experience. Absolutely. That's what people are looking for. People are looking for a great experience. If they're looking, if they're going online, the biggest mistake, there's all the things that we've talked about, but there's also this whole idea of authenticity. A local brick and mortar or a local brick and mortar that has an online presence. I really consider small, online retailers sort of like local retailers. This whole idea of, be great, be yourself, tell your story, be authentic, and do the things that reflect your commitment to your customers. When I talk about sales training, that's a reflection of a commitment to the customers. When we talk about, what does your website look like? What does it feel like? Does it tell your story? Again, that's a commitment to your customers, a commitment to how they feel about themselves, a commitment to how they feel about you. And if you are a pro, if you're good, if you're out there working hard to be better as a business person, and you're really leading with your heart, good things happen.
So good. Well, Bob, thank you so much again for your time today. And if anyone wants to follow up and touch base with you, Bob, we'll have all of your information in our show notes. But give us your website one more time. In case
it's WhizBangTraining.com, and there's an H in WhizBang.
Perfect. And we'll get that all linked up in the show notes. Thanks again, Bob, for your time and for being the leader that you are for this industry. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Ashley, and thanks for all the good work you do too.
Wasn't that a great episode? Bob is such a wealth of knowledge, and I can't wait to share even more of that great experience Bob has with all of you who are members of the Boutique Hub. Bob himself has been a member of the Boutique Hub for over a year now, and actually, right before we recorded this podcast, shared with us a very special video just for Boutique Hub members in our training library on his pricing strategy and how to get more bang for your buck in the world of retail. So if you are a Boutique Hub member, I invite you to head on over to our training library, enjoy Bob's video, and look for more content that Bob's going to be sharing with all of our members of the Boutique Hub very soon. He certainly is a world of knowledge and a wealth of information, and we're so thankful to be working with him. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, let me know what you were doing while you listened to the show. Send me an Insta story over at AJ Alderson. I'd love to see, and I'd be happy to repost it on my story and over on Boutique Hub Business. You guys, your feedback means the world to me on this show, and I want to make sure that each and every week we're showing up and giving you the best information we possibly can to help you run your business. And then invite you as members of the Boutique Hub, if you're not already, to come on over and take it one step further inside of our training library, which is packed with over 100 hours of training and information for your business, for your wholesale business, for your team, and also take advantage of all those exclusive discounts that are offered to Boutique Hub members. I'm not sure if you knew this, but there's over $3,000 a year worth of savings available to you as a Boutique Hub member, all for a membership of $24 a month. So it's a pretty good ROI if you ask me. Just by being a member of the Hub, there's a number of service providers and brands that are willing to give you something special just to make sure that you succeed in business. So take advantage of that anytime, and don't forget, message me if you ever have questions or feedback or just need more information. Again, it's AJ Alderson on Instagram, and I'd love to chat. We'll talk to you next week, guys. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We hope that you loved it. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a rating and review down below for a chance to be one of our featured listeners each and every week. For more information on our spirit of community over competition and how to access complete show notes and bonus downloads from our guests, head on over to theboutiquehub.com and join the community. We'll see you next week.